these aspects and characteristics of design thinking, I want to share with you, or rather take you through this very brief video case study of Apple, which is considered among the very best examples of at a company-wide design thinking adoption. Now, some of you may be aware that Steve Jobs, founder of Apple, who tragically passed away because of pancreatic cancer at a rather young age. He was in his early 50s, and that was more than 10 years back that he passed away. But if you look at the share price of Apple, it has grown almost 6x since then. 6 times growth since he passed away. And there is no new product that Apple has launched. No truly revolutionary product. All of the products that Apple is continues to be the world's most valuable company. All of those products were launched during Steve Jobs' time. The only new product that has been launched after that, but it has not been a revolutionary success compared to other Apple products, has been Apple iWatch. So there is something that he established into the DNA of Apple, which is a way of strategizing and implementing strategy, which is design thinking led. And it is just not about product design. Obviously, it shows up remarkably in product design because it is clutter free and very, very minimalist. Steve Jobs was personally inspired by Picasso, the great painter, and Picasso was the founder of the minimalist school of painting. And Steve Jobs was so fond of Picasso, and he could also indulge that passion of his that the Cupertino headquarters of Apple had Picasso's original works worth billions of dollars. And Steve Jobs collected that in his lifetime. I think I have something as a slide to show as an example why Steve Jobs was so enamored with Picasso. Just give me a moment. I had that. Yes, here it is. So what you're looking at is an original lithograph of Picasso. There are 11 bulls here, and if you start from the bottom leftmost corner, and as you go up and then come down in the rightmost column, go up and come down again. By the time you're at the 11th bull, where I'm moving the cursor, by the time you are here, you can see it is the outline of a bull, very much the outline of a bull. But compare that to the very first, in complete flesh and blood and all of the flap there. Compare it to the very first lithograph. And with this is charcoal on paper lithograph that Picasso drew. And the original artwork was purchased by Steve Jobs. So this is an illustration of the minimalist school of design, starting from the very first lithograph of the bull. By the time you're at the 11th one, beneath which Picasso has given his signature. So by the time you're at the 11th bull, you can see it is just the outline. And this minimalist school of design is what Steve Jobs adopted in Apple iPhone, for instance, and other Apple devices. So when he launched the iPhone in 2007, and that launch video is available on YouTube, and he's launching the iPhone, showing it to the world. At that point in time, all of the smartphones that were popular, like there was Nokia, there was Motorola, there was obviously BlackBerry. BlackBerry pioneered QWERTY keyboard. All of these smartphones had that QWERTY keyboard set up, lots of buttons, and completely clutter-breaking, unconventional. Apple launches just one button, the home button, and otherwise you had a completely flat, screen, and you just had the home button, and that too was a touch screen, not that you had to click on buttons like in a QWERTY keyboard. So it was a touch screen that was operated just with your single thumb or finger. And that is a big risk he took, because in a smartphone market dominated by QWERTY keyboard, he came up with the idea of a single button, the home button. That's an example of minimalist design. But it goes beyond product design. And it is an entire systemic thinking and business design that we are looking at in how Apple has adopted design thinking. So I will first take you through the video, very brief video. This is a Harvard Business School case study also on Apple adopting design thinking principle. And then I will take you through how, going beyond product design, Apple has incorporated design thinking into its business strategy, formulation, and execution. And that then explains why Apple's stock price has grown by 6x since Steve Jobs passed away. And even though the company has not launched any new device after that, no revolutionary device, still its share price continues to dazzle. In fact, Warren Buffett, who is considered the world's smartest investor, Warren Buffett invested in Apple for the first time after Steve Jobs passed away. And that is quite an irony, that what prompted Warren Buffett to invest after Steve Jobs passed away and not in his lifetime, which means he must have seen something in Apple going beyond its product lineup. And that secret sauce which is there in Apple is what we will discuss briefly after you watch this video. That secret sauce is to do with how Apple has embraced design thinking approach in all of its business operations. Okay, I'll just optimize this for sharing and then I will replay. Can you see my screen? I'm just playing it and let me know if the audio and video are fine.
Design thinking and innovation.
Good?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Design thinking and innovation at Apple. A Harvard business case that won 2013 ECCH Case Award. The authors of the business case are Harvard Business School professor Stephen Tomke and independent researcher Barbara Feinberg. The summary and the presentation are created by Li Wei, Technology Commercialization Manager from Agency for Science, Technology and Research, Singapore. The full business case is available from Harvard Business Review. In 2012, Apple became the most valuable public traded company in history with $600 share price, $620 billion market capital, and $100 billion annual sales. Apple's success was not just the result of strategic moves or innate sense of market timing. It is a surprising consistency in the way the company worked. Simply put, the Apple way. First, design thinking. Those of us on the original Macintosh team were really excited about what we were doing. The result was that people saw a Mac and fell in love with it. There was an emotional connection. That, I think, came from the heart and soul of the design team. Bill Atkinson, member of Apple Macintosh development team. In the mid-1970s, computers were typically housed in discrete locations and only used by specialists. The notion of computer as a tool for individual work was unimaginable in the 1970s. To help people love their equipment and the experience of using it, the level of complexity needed to be reduced dramatically. Apple's product starts with design, from people's need and want. The design of the product is not limited by technology. The engineers are pushed to use the same kind of creativity and innovation to make it happen. Design is very well thought through. It is beyond fashion. The capacity and technology to build it is not commoditized, and no compromise for the functionalities. This is design thinking, a combination of user desirability, technology possibility, and market viability. Smallest of details are scrutinized, not just the appearance of the product, but also its functions, features, and packaging. The design team kept on going deep until they found the key underlying principle of a problem, then built on it. Design is not just what it looks like and feels like. Design is how it works. That simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. Second, strategy and execution. You can see a lot just by observing. Yogi Berra, Major League Baseball player and manager. Apple's history began in 1976. It launched the first personal computer, Apple II, in 1978. In 1981, IBM entered the market with its PC that can be cloned. Since 1985, Apple's market share kept declining. The board of Apple axed Steve Jobs. In the following 11 years, products and projects at Apple proliferated in consequence of various strategies, and many of them failed. The technology department process became more traditional and resembled approaches found at other companies. Process makes you more efficient, but innovation comes from people calling each other at 10:30 at night with a new idea. It comes from saying no to 1,000 things to make sure we don't get on the wrong track or try to do too much. By Steve Jobs. Everything changed after Steve Jobs returned to Apple in 1997. Decisions were made to achieve the excellence in execution. Stopped licensing program eliminated 70% of new projects. Product line was reduced from 15 to only 3. Website was launched for direct sales. Sophisticated marketing kept product development complete secret. Shut down facilities and moved them abroad. Inventory was reduced from months to a few days. Apple also adopted the platform strategy for its products. They designed the initial product as a platform with an architecture that accommodated the development and the production of the derivative products. Customers' experience was integrated into Apple's product design and development. A lot of it empirically drives with iterative customer involvement. Apple worked intimately with manufacturers and assured that their products be completely attuned to customers. Apple's product always evolves. The importance of design is a motivation to continued innovation rather than a static approach that assumes a single conclusion. Third, CEO as chief innovator. The really great person will keep on going and find the key underlying principle of the problem and come up with a beautiful, elegant solution that works. Steve Levy, author of The Perfect Thing. Company founders essentially imprint their organizations with their own personality characteristics, and Apple Jobs is no exception. Steve Jobs and Apple seem like interchangeable terms. Steve Jobs' drive for perfection was Apple's drive for beautiful, elegant products and its superior operations. Steve Jobs' vision held that Apple's products were to be personal tools for individuals instead of enterprise solution. Steve Jobs also had total hands-on involvement in decision-making, from strategy to product and service design to packaging. Fourth, bold business experimentation. The greatest artists like Dylan, Picasso, and Newton risked failure. And if we want to be great, we've got to risk it too. Steve Jobs. When everyone was moving online, Apple decided to move into retail and created every Apple store with the same painstaking focus on details. Against conventional wisdom of open platform, collaboration, community design, transparency, Apple insisted to develop and integrate its own hardware, software, and keep product launches secret. Apple was also constantly learning, adapting, and evolving. From the design of array of colors to black and white color theme. From the closed developer community to the open developer platform. From no compatibility for other OS to Windows compatibility. In summary, the root of Apple's success was a set of principles with a deep commitment to great products and services at its core. Design thinking, clear development strategy and execution, its CEO as chief innovator, and the rational courage to conduct bold business experiments. For more presentations about innovation management and technology,
Okay, so what are your takeaways from this? As you would have noticed, it is just not about product design, but goes far and far beyond product design. It is a system-wide way of thinking and executing business strategies, which is how Apple has adopted design thinking. But in your view, what are some of the replicable and transferable learnings that we can pick from Apple and apply to our respective contexts, wherever in whatever role you are in? Yes. go ahead.
One of the thing which Apple did was that when every product manufacturers were going online, so Apple created the Apple Store to give a feel of the way things are at Apple. So that store, I believe, is created the same way everywhere. So that gave an experience. People were able to experience the Apple thing. So that's one thing which they did it. And another one is they looked at their CEO is their chief innovator. So he was the guy who was driving things and who was making most of the decisions and calls and other things. So him being the person who is fully involved. So that really was the differentiator for Apple when compared to other people, other manufacturers.
All right.
Apple removed all the complexities related to the computer and made it easier for everybody. A normal person can also start using the PC.
Okay.
So they did it. Also used iterative methods.
Yeah.
I'm showing you a chart on screen. What does this tell you? March 2016 is
The share price of Apple.
Yes. So March 2016, more than 3 years after Steve Jobs died, is when Warren Buffett, through Berkshire Hathaway, his investment fund, invested in Apple for the first time. And you can see the share price growth since then. That was at 26.5 USD. And it has even crossed 200 USD recently. Exactly where it is right now, I don't recollect, but you can see almost 6x, 5x to 6x growth very easily. We are talking about. So in a span of less than 6 years since he invested. And last year, Berkshire Hathaway pruned its stake in Apple, which was more for financial portfolio realignment or rejig reasons than because Warren Buffett has lost any confidence in that Apple shares can keep growing even from here. So it was a purely portfolio realignment decision, not that Apple has stopped being the high performance company that he had envisaged then. And this is Warren Buffett's statement he made in April 23. If you are an Apple user and somebody offers you $10,000, but the only provision is they will take away your iPhone and you will never be able to buy another, you are not going to take it. Which very clearly underscores the kind of faith and trust Warren Buffett, someone like him, must have done a lot of homework to arrive at this kind of a blind faith in Apple's ability to generate sustained revenue and profitability growth. So look at what you saw in the video from this perspective and see if there is a bigger explanation for what Apple is doing. The video alluded to it. In one place, it was mentioning about how Apple is not just a product company, but it has gone beyond being a product company.
One where they provided solution, where the product design was more from the understanding of what the customers need rather than depending on the technology.
Okay. And what kind of solutions are we talking about?
These are the personalized solutions, not an enterprise.
One thing, Kuntam, the video was presenting is how Apple has created a platform and just not isolated standalone products. It is a platform.
It's an ecosystem they created.
Very good. Very good.
Everything they put in-house, like software development, hardware, they put under their own hoods.
Right.
There was an aspect of minimalism through
and plus they were looking at three key things. One is user desirability, and the technology innovation, and the market viability. So these things were deciding factor for all their products.
Yes, true. At the same time, if you are undertaking various initiatives, at some stage company bosses would expect you to be able to monetize it. Eventually, it has to generate revenue and profitability growth for the company. So how is Apple able to monetize all of these things it is doing is illustrated here on this chart. You can see the trajectory here, and this is the reason, or the biggest reason, why Warren Buffett decided to commit substantial. There was a stage in his portfolio till about a year back. Apple accounted for almost 50% of Berkshire Hathaway's total equity portfolio. So it was just not that Buffett took a bet on Apple; it was his biggest bet. You can see that the services revenue growth since 2018 has been exponential, and it contributes, as of 2022, FY22, it contributed 20% to Apple's revenue, but a disproportionate 34% to its profits. Now, something like that gets the attention of Warren Buffett, and it has quadrupled since 2015. The gross margins of services business is estimated at 66%, which is more than twice of the hardware business margin. So let's take an iPhone. The gross margin on an iPhone for Apple would be in the range of 33 to 35% for each handset sold, which itself is industry leading, because the nearest competitor and the most premium smartphone next to iPhone, that is from Samsung, the gross margin is around 20-22%. So Apple has substantially higher gross margin on its devices compared to its competitors. But the services gross margin is twice of the product's gross margin at 66%. Something like that is a very juicy carrot for, and this is annuity revenue. If you look at the table on the right-hand side, you see the services revenue split. This is for 2020, not for 2022, but it does give you an idea of what all goes into the services revenue of Apple. And it has by now crossed $100 billion. Just the services revenue of Apple is surpassing $100 billion USD. Licensing revenue, for instance, you see that 10.5 billion out of 53.7 billion in 2020. Licensing revenue. What do you think that licensing revenue is? Where is that coming from? That just goes to show an example of, somebody mentioned the word ecosystem. The services revenue heads that you see here, they are examples of the ecosystem that Apple has created, and it dominates. It is in control of that ecosystem, and it keeps deriving annuity, assured revenue and profits from that ecosystem.
So is it something the licensing they give to other third-party vendors? From there, they're getting this revenue?
Okay.
It's like the fee they would be charging Spotify, for example.
Very
to
good.
list it on
Yes.
App Store. So that because Spotify needs users are equal to Apple users. So
Yeah.
they provide that critical mass.
Okay, wonderful. Very close to how Apple is generating revenue, licensing revenue. Yes, Vishnu.
Patents. They've got certain patents where they have a tie-up with, like what I know of, there is a tie-up between Qualcomm and Apple, where specific chip technology is something which is being used by Qualcomm, has been patented by Apple. So they're actually getting revenue against that.
Yes, Vishnu, go ahead.
Yeah, I think, sir, in addition to all other earlier products, the services, they also sell their product on licensing basis, like say, for example, Apple, some certain softwares and certain applications which are given product as a service subscription model, and the fees charged licensing.
Okay, all right. And let me tell you, the biggest revenue stream within licensing is the amount that Google pays to Apple. So every time you run a search, Google search using an Apple device, like let's say an iPhone, and you are running a Google search, it generates revenue for Apple. Imagine billions of those searches happening every day. Each of those searches is generating revenue for Apple as licensing fee to be paid by Google, because Google as a browser is being used on Apple iPhone. So Apple is providing a gateway to Google through which Google is being used by, and obviously Google is making money on ad revenue and so many other revenue streams it has created based on its search engine. But every search that is triggered on Google or any other search engine, those respective search engines pay a license fee to Apple.
So
And that can go on in perpetuity. Revenue streams like these where you are generating rental income. You know, in that book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, if you've read that book, the author talks about passive income, right? So just like for an individual, passive income is the best form of income to have. For instance, you invest in real estate and it generates rental income for you. You're not sweating for it anymore. There was a time you sweated for it to build that asset, and now it is generating rental income. So it is passive income. Similarly, you may invest in high dividend paying companies. And like most PSU stocks, profit-making PSU stocks are high dividend pay masters. So you've accumulated a certain number of shares over the years, and there are people who generate 50 lakh, 1 crore kind of amount in a year just through the dividend income of shares they invested in over the last 30, 40 years. That's again passive income. So you do the hard work once or over the years, and then you stop doing the hard work, but the income accrual keeps happening in perpetuity. All of the services revenues you are seeing here, most of it, if not all of it, is of that nature. It is not only services, higher margin income, but it is also passive income. And something like that makes stock price very, very, any share, mouth-watering for a person like Warren Buffett. Somebody wanted to contribute a point?
Yeah, I was just wanted to highlight. So this is a very common practice in pharma industry. Me coming from that, I just wanted to put it across. So for example, we are into contract manufacturing services, where we develop products for the US market, where licensing the same dossier to the other geographies, where I'll be doing a partnership, a B2B partnership with leading companies in the Europe or the Japan market, and get a fixed licensing revenue upfront, and then a royalty based on the whatever units they are selling. So it's a very steady revenue source. I mean, roughly about 20% of our company's revenue comes from that, with again 85% GC coming through, passing through.
Okay, right. Absolutely, that too is a relevant example here. Yes, Saurabh, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think the video also clarify how the transformation is now happening. Earlier, Apple was quite rigid with their own platform. Now they are also selling toward the cross-platform support, right? So the breakdown, the revenue breakdown that you have shown, right? This cross-platform support comes under third-party subscription or licensing?
Yeah, so your question is that platform support is reflected in which of these heads?
Right. The cross-platform support.
Okay. Can anyone respond to that question? I'm not an expert enough to comment on this, although I can hazard a guess. Anyone who can respond to this question competently? Where would something like platform? So can you explain platform support to me?
Yeah, right now they are mentioning they are also moving towards the Windows-based services, right? So when the tier 2 operating system, right? Yeah. So Windows is a Microsoft product. If you are going to put in your product over there, they're also paying, right? So it could be a licensing, but also is coming under third-party subscription, right? So
so you are saying that somebody who is using, who wants to use MS-DOS on Apple, Apple allows that to be used on their platform. So I think it should be a part of licensing.
Yeah, that would be a part of licensing. Yes. Third-party subscriptions would happen when Apple allows one of its platforms to be available on, let's say, a Play Store. So that would be third-party subscription. But if you can just plug in an Apple feature, then they've basically tied up with Microsoft over here and is providing the licensing part of it, so that the end user can use that particular product.
To me also it appears more logical for this to be included in licensing fee. But those of you who are interested, you can read up Apple's latest annual report, where there would surely be a commentary around their services revenue. Last time I looked at it, it had surpassed 100 billion USD services revenue. So now 2025 annual report would be due in another 2 months, but 2024 report and 25 3 quarters will still be available.
So looks like after Steve Jobs passed away, they gave more focus on the service-based selling. Before it was quite product-centric.
Yes. Which is what brings me to the next slide, where somebody had talked about the word ecosystem, and the case was also alluding to it. So if you look at the ecosystem Apple has created, we can say that Steve Jobs played an instrumental role and even led the creation of the foundation for this ecosystem. All of the product portfolio of Apple that was launched in the preceding 10 years before Steve Jobs passed away, all of that has created an ecosystem of services and solutions, which is interconnected through a software that too is their in-house proprietary software, iOS. So it is the combination of products, software, hardware, all of it coming together. And then on top of it, they've created a community of users, community of developers. So all of these communities are also now using multiple Apple devices. And those devices can talk to each other. They are linked with each other. So if you think of a typical Apple user, entertainment, work, education, all of the life needs, shopping, all of the life needs are being served in an interlinked, integrated manner through Apple devices and its proprietary software. So Warren Buffett refers to this as an economic moat, MOAT, and which is the analogy he gives for companies like Apple and Gillette and Coca-Cola kind of companies, American Express. If you look at Berkshire Hathaway's current stock portfolio, equity portfolio, you would find companies like these have been around for decades. American Express, Coca-Cola, Gillette. And Apple has also been there, but not since for the last decade or so. It's been a much recent entrant. But over a short period, it accounted for almost 48% of Berkshire Hathaway's total equity portfolio, which has now been brought down by less than half of it. Because the kind of share price growth that Warren Buffett got over 6 years, he must have thought, I should book some profits because this is not going to sustain this kind of growth in the next 6 years. So that was a purely portfolio realignment decision, like I mentioned, not because Apple has stopped performing as a company. Any idea why Warren Buffett uses the economic moat analogy to invest in companies like Apple that have been able to create a value creation ecosystem that is led by design thinking, which means solving the problems of your target audience in a way by creating a whole ecosystem of products, services, solutions under one roof, and which addresses various life needs of your target audience. That is what Apple devices are doing. It's just not a device, just not a phone or a smartphone, but it addresses various life needs by integrating with a host of services and solutions in other Apple devices.
Is it because it's if you create such a moat, it is very difficult to kind of replicate by your competition, right? So you will always be in the front runner in the race.
Yeah.
So that allows you to have that peak market share position. So no matter where the industry is moving, you will always be in the front.
Yeah.
Could that be the reason?
Right. Yes. Okay.
Because in this, extending this answer, because Nokia also tried to create an ecosystem when the Microsoft's devices had moved to Nokia and then created a Windows-based mobile. But
even BlackBerry tried doing so.
Correct.
Yeah.
But they were never able to. They had the product design, but the way Apple implemented this design thinking approach
in more recent years, you would notice that Amazon has been able to create that moat.
Yes, correct.
Right? There are a host of Amazon devices, services, and solutions which they have brought together, both in B2B and B2C context.
Yeah.
So, and you're right, Sharad. So, what? Anyone else who wants to take a stand?
The reason Warren Buffett treats Apple as a moat is that it has got the brand power. just like Coke and other things. It has created customer loyalty, because that's a key factor. Customer loyalty ensures that the business continues and it grows as well. So that is something which he has. So once you have that customer loyalty coming in, you have the network effect, then you will have the advantage. And they have, these companies have got some proprietary technology which others don't have. That again adds to the value of it. So maybe Apple's screens, the touch screen, they've got certain functionalities which others can't replicate, should not replicate because of this thing. And plus they have their earbuds and everything. Every product they come up with, they will have something called as a proprietary technology in that. And sometimes again they have exclusive access to raw materials. So they use certain raw materials which cannot be, they have the exclusive access to it. Nobody else should access it. So that makes them even more niche. So these things ensure that you have continuous revenue. So that's what Warren Buffett looks at. He doesn't like, he will not like to invest in an area where you generate a business and then that business fizzles out. No, he looks at long-term perspective. Yes.
I believe all of you would have seen at least one fort in your lifetime by now. And these olden days forts were surrounded by those water bodies, moats. And deliberately these moats were infested with crocodiles and other dangerous mammals that could live there, and prevent the enemy or any adversary from attacking the fort. The only way you could enter the fort was through a drawbridge that would come down or go up. So that's the analogy here, what Irshad explained just now. So bigger the moat is and deeper the moat is, more and more defensible the palace is. So the palace here is the market share or profitability of the company, whatever is being coveted as an economic reward or gain. That is the palace, that is the fortress. And if you have a deeper moat and a wider moat, it prevents your competition from taking away market share or whatever is worth protecting or defending for you as a company. Companies that have established strong moats typically have, like Irshad mentioned, they have strong brand recall, brand power. That's one strong moat, because it takes decades to create brand recall. Similarly, patents and proprietary solutions is another way of creating moat, because patents can't be imitated or replicated easily. Likewise, you would find that product design and your ability to cater to your target audience's needs by creating an ecosystem also becomes a very strong moat. So in Apple's case, we find it is, while its individual brand power is very strong, if you look at the Interbrand Global Survey year after year, which is the world's most reputed brand survey, brand management agency, Interbrand. So Interbrand publishes a list of the world's most reputed brands globally. Apple has been among the top 10 brands for the last so many years. Obviously, its brand power is globally undeniable. But that alone does not explain why Apple's moat is this strong, where it is able to justify 30 to 35% higher gross margins over its competition, over its nearest competitor. And so brand strength is there, obviously. Product design strength is also there. But individually, they don't explain the kind of sustained higher than industry average profitability Apple has. But bring all of it together, and the ecosystem, the walled garden ecosystem that Wall Street Journal, I think, used this phrase for the first time, that Apple has a walled garden ecosystem. That is, garden has been such impregnable, strong and high walls exist. This garden can't be invaded by the competition. Same analogy as an economic moat. So, and we can see here very clearly how design thinking has enabled Apple to create this kind of an ecosystem, which I believe is the sort of strategic orientation with which we should look at design thinking. That it can be that trigger, it can be that contributory force and approach through which businesses can create an ecosystem that has the potential to become an economic moat for the company, defending its market share or customer base from its competition. Yes, Piyush, go ahead.
Yeah, I was saying, like you said, walled garden, the technology, their software or the operating system is actually impregnable. So just to give you an example, I had used a Apple phone once and before that and after that I've been an Android user. So the interoperability or the apps or the bugs or the viruses, for example, when you use Apple, you don't have to worry about those kind of things. Like you said, more certain advantages help protect companies from their competitors. I was reading that definition. I was not clear about what exactly was. So I think this impregnable attribute of an iOS system, though it is a little painful to operate, I think that
is true.
that has created that kind of brand value and that has created that kind of loyalty in the customers, especially in US and Europe, where if an iPhone is to be launched, people are lined up for 12 hours, 14 hours before outside the stores to buy an iPhone worth $1,500, at the full value.
Yes. Yeah. And this is a product that is technically 17 years old. Probably, I can't think of any other technology product that has not only survived for this long in an era of such high obsolescence, but is also thriving, just not survived. A product that is 17 years old. Yes, go on, Irshad.
Yeah, one other thing I would like to add is Apple has created by making people being part of the ecosystem, they created a very high switching cost. So a person, if he wants to move away from Apple, so various reasons, he just cannot, because he is his data is in iCloud.
So the stickiness is very high.
Yeah. So and I use iWatch, and then if you want to move to Android, so you will have to
the user
everything. User lock-in. The high switching cost is that's a moat. That's again a characteristic of a moat which Apple uses quite effectively.
Right. Yes, Saurabh, go ahead.
Yeah, I think one point we also need to mention over here about their supplier. I think they have very niche supply chain also, and they have with their supply for a long term, right? So if you see from a service perspective, it was quite expecting that wherever you go, right, any Apple product, the service will also be very good, because that disruption will not be happen in case of supply chain break, right? So that is another point. I think it's very good we can mention over here.
Right. Yes, absolutely. Very well. Ranjit, go ahead.
Yeah, in 2018, they stick to their company values. When US government asked for sharing the information, they denied it. Denying the US government request is something which it is really makes every user to think. That has developed the more loyalty of the customers, that it is more secured. Using Apple services is more secured, and it is so the brand value has jumped.
Yeah. Which is why for many enterprises, Apple iPhone becomes their go-to device. Some people have countered this by saying, I've spoken to that much of it is perception, but even if it is perception, it is quite strong in the business community that Apple devices are far more secure, and iOS is relatively impregnable, bug-free, and is therefore preferred by organizations. Yes, Ravi, go ahead.
So as Irshad had mentioned that the switching cost is too high. So you hardly find people only using one standalone product of Apple. It would be an add-on services that they are buying. Similar thing, other platforms or other brands are now realizing that they have to move into their own operating system or own ecosystem so that they can build up that. Otherwise, Xiaomi tried doing the same thing. They had built up an ecosystem, but their ecosystem was more around the products and only these different apps on Android. But now Huawei, Xiaomi, they are trying to build in their own operating system so that they resolve their dependency on Google or Play Store on Android, and then move out from that and make the same profitability. So,
okay, yeah. Yes, Kuntam, go ahead.
Yeah, so I feel Apple, apart from all these specificalities of impenetrable security, everything, I think they made the product aspirational to people, right? Especially markets like India, while they move into markets, emerging markets, I think holding an iPhone was always made or felt like you are successful in life, especially
it's a status symbol.
In middle class families, you're successful, then you have Apple iPhone. So I think that's where the actual win has come for Apple, actual growth has come for Apple.
And this remains so even in affluent classes. I've seen just that affluent classes are flashing the latest iPhone or the most expensive iPhone. But to carry an iPhone around which costs ₹1 lakh or more is something which is a status symbol even in relatively affluent circles.
Correct. So I think that's where I marry the success of Apple, growth of Apple as well. They made it successfully aspirational product.
Yes.
Thank you.
And which is true even for their laptop, right?
Absolutely, yes.
You at an airport, for instance, if you are seen carrying around an Apple laptop, then obviously it stands out.
When I worked with Apple retail, they gave me a MacBook Air. And everywhere, wherever I used to get a chance, I used to take it off my bag and keep it out, right? It was a symbol. So that's where I married the success.
Although an MS Office loyalist like me, who survives on Excel usage day in and day out for my professional work, because I do a lot of data analytics related training as well, I can't survive without it. And which is the biggest reason I never considered using a MacBook. But because even if it supports MS Office, I have this perception in my mind that it won't be as effortless as it is on other laptops. Because some of these students often walk up to me and they say that they have a MacBook and they are struggling with how to use Excel on MacBook. So for me, the perception is that it will just be too difficult for me to figure out, and I've stayed away from it. But
also, just to add another point, Doctor, I think Apple has made keeping memories much more easier and safer, right? Which again resonates a lot with the people. I know my pic or the video is going to be of superior quality, and I think people resonated with it a lot, and then that's how the growth is really going up.
Yes. So that's something I can personally attest to. I've noticed that pics taken from Apple iPhone are much sharper in resolution compared to other phones. That I have noticed on several occasions. But I've not really done a Rajiv Makhani kind of comparison, the renowned tech reviewer. Maybe even this can be refuted. But anecdotally, I am under the impression that Apple iPhones really take among the best picks possible for any smartphone.
And I'll just say,
yes, do you want to comment on that?
Until Samsung launches the new variant of S series that year, Apple leads the crown. Otherwise, then crown goes to Samsung.
Yeah. So, there was this compatriot of Steve Jobs, I forget his name, who was the lead product designer at Apple during Steve Jobs' stint there, and he worked for more than a decade with Steve Jobs. So the two of them, although Steve Jobs had quite an abrasive personality, he was not very easy to work with or get along with. If you've seen that movie Pirates of Silicon Valley, anyone who has seen that movie, Pirates of Silicon Valley?
Yes, Doctor.
Oh, you have? Kuntam? So
John Ivey is the person.
Yes, Doctor. Sorry.
Okay. Siddharth, you have also seen that movie?
So John, I have not seen the movie. I've read the book on design by John Ivey. Okay. So that's how I know.
Yeah, so this is a thoroughly entertaining and very informative movie. If through one movie you want to understand the evolution of both the tech and the software and hardware industry as we know it today. The post-Hewlett-Packard, the post-IBM era, which is where Microsoft and Apple grew. So in the mid-1970s or so, these two tech titans or Mughals, who were then both dropouts from renowned Ivy League colleges, Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. So one person towards the East Coast, the other on the West Coast, and they started their individual journeys and trajectory, which was soon to clash. And they had no love lost for each other. They were right from day one, they were adversaries. Both of them wanted to dominate both hardware and software. And Apple, between Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs, started on the West Coast at college dormitory phenomenon. And similarly, the two co-founders, Bill Gates, started Microsoft. And this movie portrays how both the companies initially grew independently and how then they met in ether and how they clashed and how these two personalities, for a brief while they were partners, but then they became adversaries. And how they reshaped, or in fact they created and then reshaped the entire hardware and software industry, tech industry as we know it today. So one of the scenes in this movie is where, and this goes on to show the thinking that Steve Jobs operated with as a design thinker much later. One of the scenes in this movie is where Steve Wozniak, who is actually the whiz kid of the duo, Steve Jobs was more of the person who could sell a vision. He could literally sell ice to an Eskimo. He was that kind of a person. He was also visionary. He could see several decades ahead. But the tinkering with the product talent, the genius, that was Steve Wozniak. So Steve Wozniak's father saw that his child was a child prodigy, and he presented Steve Wozniak to his employers, Hewlett Packard. Wozniak's father was working at HP, and HP saw potential in him and decided to fund his tinkering. Like, he was the person who would open a radio fully and then would disassemble and look at the nuts and bolts. And all of these small tinkerings were being funded by HP. And that's how Steve Wozniak created what later would become the world's first personal computer, the first PC. And Steve Jobs saw immense potential in it, but this was mid-1970s, so it was much ahead of its time. In fact, Apple was the company that launched the world's first PC in 1984, and the product bombed. It nearly sank the company. It was much ahead of its time. So there is this funny scene in the movie, but also quite prophetic, where Steve Wozniak, because his research was being funded by HP, they had the first right to refusal. Anything that he invented, HP must refuse it first, only then Wozniak can take it elsewhere, including for his own usage. So Wozniak enters HP office. There is this boss sitting there, a fat man on the other side of the table. And Wozniak somehow stumbles into the room. This contraption he's carrying, he puts on the table. And this man is looking at him, puzzled quizzically. What is it that he's putting on the table? Looks like some loosely assembled contraption. One box here, a keypad there. So he asks Wozniak, what is this? And Wozniak is explaining to this HP senior official that this is a personal computer. And that person's response is, but because that was the era of computing machines by IBM, industrial computing, large room-sized computing machines. And then this person looks at Wozniak and says quizzically, but why would somebody need a computer in their home? Right? This is late 1970s we are talking about. And in retrospect, we can see how stupid that statement was. So Wozniak, on getting that refusal, goes back to the garage from where he and Jobs were operating, literally a garage. That garage belonged to Wozniak's father. And Steve Jobs is pacing up and down restlessly, wondering that what if HP says yes to Wozniak's product? Then he loses the opportunity to market it. And Wozniak is coming from a distance, and Jobs looks at him and keeps asking, what? And Wozniak says, they refused. And and Steve Jobs is jubilant, like he's hitting the roof. Okay, so it just goes on to show that the kind of bets you are taking as a design thinker. He was sacked from his own company later on. And it was his return to Apple, his second innings at Apple, which is where iPhone, iPad, iPod, all of these innovations happened. So his first stint was a disaster. He was sacked and then he was brought back. And it is the second stint. But one what if question is, what if he had not been brought back? We would have never seen the Apple. We may have never seen the Apple that we know today, and never seen the second avatar of Steve Jobs. So a lot of it is also, destiny. But if you go the design thinking route, then there's a structured approach, the ecosystem approach we are talking about. That's an important takeaway for us. And this product designer who worked with Apple for many years, he gives us the analogy of a hairball. He says that design thinking, the Apple way, can be very confusing to implement. It's very chaotic and confusing. So is there a way we can untangle it? He likens the experience to that of a hairball. Try untangling a hairball. Those of you who have a thick mop of hair on your head, okay, maybe next time you're brushing your hair, just pluck a hairball out of it and try untangling a hairball end to end. And it would take till eternity for you to do that. So here you are looking at a hairball, untangling it can be so confusing, but if you can do it, then you start with a business question and you end with value creation. So that's why the question mark and the dollar sign. We are starting with a question that is a problem or an opportunity question, and we are ending by the time we have applied design thinking and process to that question, we are able to arrive at value creation and monetize that opportunity. So that's the approach we are looking at now, which is this 4-step model I want to present to you, which is a design thinking process. Just give me a moment. So this is the 4-stage design thinking process that I'm presenting to you, because the Apple way of untangling a hairball is not for lesser mortals like us. There is an Apple way. There is some secret sauce they've figured out, which they're not even willing to share with the world. So is there a simpler way, a meticulous, methodical approach to adopting design thinking in strategy formulation and implementation? So this is the 4-stage design thinking methodology. The first stage is what is. What is about understanding the current reality. Exploring and understanding the current reality. What is the objective of what is stage? The objective is to identify pain points and need gaps. If you go back to each of the 5 caselets we did yesterday, you would clearly see that there were pain points and need gaps that were identified in each of those, which were then being addressed. And on this, I will have a brief discussion shortly with each team summarizing what is it that they can relate to by looking at this 4-stage process. So then we next come to what if. What if is about generating possibilities and options to address the need gaps and pain points. So at what is, we have conducted various sorts of exploration of users, and some of those exploratory techniques I will discuss with you slightly later in this session. And having identified need gaps and pain points, we are now asking the question, what can we do about it? How can we address these need gaps and pain points? Go back to Arvind Eye Care Hospital, for instance. Need gaps and pain points identified was needless blindness, that these people living in remote areas, villages, and unable to afford expensive surgery, they are suffering with blindness which can be cured, but they are not even aware of it. So making them aware of it and then curing them, even if they can't afford it, is a need gap or pain point that was identified by the founder of Arvind Eye Care. And then the question comes is, how am I going to address this need gap? That's where he started generating various options. That is the what if stage. This is where you would brainstorm and you will come up with various options to address the need gap. The third step is what wows. What wows is about subjecting those options to critical evaluation. For instance, in case of Arvind Eye Care, whatever option you are finalizing as the solution must be affordable. It must be accessible. It must be scalable. So these are various design criteria. At the what wow stage, you will apply design criteria to evaluate various options that you've identified at the what if stage. And these design criteria, once they are fulfilled or optimally fulfilled, maybe there is no option which fulfills all of the design criteria, in which case you will look at which option is the most optimal. Having conducted that evaluation, you will then move to the last stage of what works. What works is where you will go ahead with the option which is the most optimal. You will launch that option, you will test that option if it is addressing the need gap and pain points, and you will tweak the option as and when the need arises. So it becomes a loop, an ongoing loop, where having launched the specific option, you are testing its viability, you are continuously refining it. We saw with Arvind Eye Care how over the years, they have been continuously refining their cost structure. So it's an ongoing value creation loop that you establish.
So it's an iterative process here.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So at what work stage, we are not stopping with further improvisation or innovation. Arvind Eye Care at some stage would have realized that, okay, we can manufacture the eye lens ourselves. But when they started, they did not have this realization. They were importing for $200 USD, and then they saw there was a necessity. They innovated. At some stage, they would have realized that we can conduct these mobile clinics in villages. We can recruit these nurses as paramedic staff. So all of this was not there since day one. It happened over time. Similarly, if you look at Mitti Cool, Mansukh Bhai, when he started, he only had the electricity-free refrigerator in his mind. That too for poor people who did not have access to electricity. But over time, he added more and more products, and he started targeting the affluent class as well. So what work stage, because we have an actual product or solution with users, we are learning from it, and we are continuously developing better understanding of need gaps and pain points. We go to option generation, option evaluation. So option generation is what if, option evaluation is what wows, and option market entry and testing is what works. That is how it is moving from across these 4 stages. One quick observation and question for you. You would notice the band at the top is widening and contracting. What does that indicate?
It indicates the thinking required in that particular band.
Very good. Yes, Nisraj, can you explain that?
I think it basically indicates, in what if section, when you actually understand the problem, you might come up with the multiple solutions, not one. So doing a lot of brainstorming, coming up with multiple choices, and that's why it's what if is.
Okay, so nice to see Dheeraj and Abhishek are exactly on the right track. Kuntam, go ahead.
Yeah, similar point, Doctor. So what if is a stage where we are discussing a lot of things, right? Where a lot of stakeholders are involved, and a lot of planning is happening. So what if is where we spend a lot of time, and that's what the curve represents.
Yes. Yeah. So all of you are right about this, Dheeraj, Abhishek, and Kuntam. Yes, Bhavik, go ahead.
Sir, just wanted to ask one thing. Like in what if, can we also align the vision statement of the company as well?
If the vision statement is addressing need gaps and pain points, you can do that alignment.
Okay.
So let's say Arvind Eye Care's vision statement is to heal people suffering with needless blindness. Let's say if that is their mission.
Yes.
Right. And therefore, at what if stage they have generated options through which, but let's say their mission statement is to heal people suffering with needless blindness and can't afford healthcare, but do so profitably.
Correct.
Right. In which case, then you have identified the design criteria that your option evaluation must conform to. Then simply having an option that is effective for people won't suffice. Then it must also be an option that is profitable for the company.
Understood.
Right. So clarity about your vision and mission would help you generate and evaluate options in a better way.
In that case, Prof, why most of the companies' vision mission statement are very generic or open-ended in nature?
Yes. So my experience having worked in strategy in senior roles, Sharad, is companies don't want to narrow down to a level where they are caught up in their own commitment. But then there are companies who are sticking their neck out and fulfilling that promise. For instance, Amazon says our mission is to be the world's most customer-centric company, right? And the way Amazon conducts its business, it's an obsessive focus on, if you have used Amazon e-commerce services, you would see that even at that scale, they are obsessive about managing things like delivery time and returns and refunds. There rarely is a complaint even at that scale. Companies with much lesser volumes like Ajio and Myntra and Flipkart in India have far higher number of customer complaints. So it is said that Jeff Bezos, even though he's among the top 2 or 3 richest people globally, he personally scans through dozens and dozens of customer complaints picked randomly and looks at how soon they were addressed and in what manner. So the obsession starts right at the top, and people in Amazon lose their job if they are unable to cater to a genuine customer request in time or address a complaint satisfactorily. So I think the reason most companies have a motherhood statement of a mission and vision, because committing to a very narrowly defined and rigorous vision and mission statement requires a lot of courage and conviction as a company, which very few companies have. You want to leave some, buffer and margin of error somewhere.
Right.
Play safe to a certain extent. That's my take. Having been in strategy roles, that's what I had noticed, because board of directors gets very uncomfortable with how can we commit that? What if we are unable to live up to it?
Correct. No, I have sensed that in the companies I've worked with as well.
Yeah, if you commit something like to be India's most customer-centric e-retail company or logistics company, it would take a lot for you to fulfill that promise.
And also, the feedback what I have received is that it kind of tunnels you into possibilities of expansion as well.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah.
Right. Yes.
If I'm not sure if is it okay if I share my own experience? I can actually relate to this.
Go ahead, Abhishek.
Okay.
It is, yeah.
So what I am seeing at on the screen, I can actually relate to it because there was a startup I started back in 2021. It was again a problem statement regarding the car wash. If you want to get your car clean, you need to go to the vendor location, wait for spend a couple of hours to get your car clean and all. And I so the idea was to how can I provide this service at the doorstep. And with the limited knowledge of the industry, I created an app and started the business. So what if? So at that time, the only thought was to, provide the service at the doorstep.
Okay.
We created the app with the limited knowledge of the industry. And what wows basically came after that. When we started running the business, we learned that, there are a range of services. There are different nuances in the industry. There are
It is only after launching that you started learning this hands-on.
Yes. And then over the period of 2 years, we keep learning what works well. And what is the different dynamics when it comes to vendors, when it comes to customers, when it goes to different geographies. For example, some of these states have banned the water. You cannot wash your car with the tap water. If somebody catch you, they'll fine you. Like Chandigarh, some part of Delhi, etc. There are different. Basically, prices are different depending on the geographies and the localities. Some high-paying areas, people with have highest earning. Some areas maybe low earning. Locations, etc. And so then it came, what wows? How can I provide a service to a customer, a better service to the customer at the same time, provide better visibility to a vendor as well, because there are different vendors. Those are also the customers because they are on my platform. So what we do, we basically do a kind of a matchmaking, but at the same time, vision is to provide the highest quality service at the doorstep to the customer. So there are different things. So I'll just, it's a long story, but yes, then, we came to know what wows are. And then now we are building a new app, which is multi-language, multi-currency, trying to launch at the pan-India level and maybe abroad sometime.
Right. Okay.
So
Yes. Absolutely very relevant example. Why were you hesitating in sharing it? And moreover, it's an entrepreneurial example, so valuable.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. So I would, in fact, maybe we can spend a couple of minutes for each example caselet we used yesterday. One spokesperson from each team can recap, apply this process, the 4-step process, and reflect on each of the caselets assigned to your team on how do you see the 4-stage process here could have been applied retrospectively. We are doing this as a retrospective analysis, let's say for Arvind Eye Care, for IKEA, for Detroit Airport Parallel Reality, and the other 2 examples. If you can spend a couple of minutes on each of these caselets, then we move forward to looking at, for each of these 4 stages, there are tools and techniques that we can use. For instance, to explore and understand the current reality, identify dissatisfactions, pain points, need gaps, we can use customer journey mapping and customer persona as a tool. Similarly, at what if stage, we can use brainstorming and visualization as a tool. So I will introduce you to in all around 10 such tools and techniques. That will be the next milestone in our session today. But let's spend some time looking at the caselets and then connecting those 5 caselets with the process that you are seeing here. Before that, let me just cap the discussion around the widening and contracting bands. All of you were right, those who responded, that it reflects the thinking process or type of thought process required at each stage. So there is convergent versus divergent thinking type. Convergent processes are analytical and narrowing down of options in nature, which means when you are looking at various options that have already been generated and you are conducting an evaluation of those options, to narrow down to 1 or 2 options, that's going to require convergent thinking process. Whereas if you are looking at generating options, what we call as out-of-the-box thinking, creative thinking, that would require divergent thinking, which means you have to step away from conventional thinking. You have to be divergent in your thought. That's why you find the band at what if stage is the widest, because that's where we are using divergent thinking the most. Both types of thinking are required at each stage, but for obvious reasons, more and more of analytical thinking is needed at what wows and what works stage, convergent, because you are narrowing down options, evaluating options. Whereas option generation is the main objective at what if stage, through brainstorming being the commonest tool. And therefore, that's where divergent thinking is the widest, which explains the widening of the band. So let's go on to
just one question.
Yes,
so just putting this thought process across, let's say, strategy, marketing buckets, I think the what if gap would be big, right? But when we think through this in an operations or a manufacturing setup, do you really think that the what if scenarios are that many, or it will be, the band will be same as like what was and the others?
So are you implying that for manufacturing setups, we may not require as much divergent thinking as we would require in customer facing marketing kind of situations?
I think you're limited by the boundary conditions are there. So it kind of doesn't allow you to do that much divergent.
Okay. Okay. Before I comment on it, let me open this for group's response. What do you think? It's a very relevant and insightful question Sharad is asking, that the expanding and contracting bands and the four-stage design thinking process, does it have to be attuned to various functions like manufacturing, marketing, sales, supply chain, or can we apply this sort of contracting and expanding bands uniformly?
My take on this is that we definitely the what if scenario is when we have a divergent. So we try to think out of the box. We look at all possible options. We will not close. We will not stop our thinking process, limit us to certain by any constraints we have in our thinking process. Because ideally, what will happen is you can think about anything under the sky, but when you move to the what works, that's where you will see how this the whole thing works, how whole thing fits into in your business plan. So then at that stage you have all the options of not going ahead with the for example, you have 20 ideas coming up in the what if, and then when you move on to the what works, only 2 may work. So the rest 18 will go into the back burner. But maybe that may come up at a future date. That may help you in the future date as well, because that's again a possibility. Because as you mentioned earlier for the Apple's case, when Wozniak took the laptop and the computer, the personal computer to HP to show them, they said who's going to use it, but they didn't throw away the whole thing. So they just kept it, and then it worked after a certain time. So it is the what if situation, and then what works, it worked at a later stage. So that again can happen. So what if is a very key activity where you can think everything under the sun, and then see what could work. Maybe you can take it a later stage. That's my take.
Okay. All right. Yes, Kuntam, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think it does not have to be only customer facing, right? The methodology that we see here can be applied to each and every problem statement that we have, either it is manufacturing or supply chain. Let us say I want to increase my truck utilization in supply chain, correct?
Yeah.
Or if I want to increase my, if I want to reduce my defects in the e-commerce delivery ecosystem, I feel for everything, this methodology works, correct? Because you're understanding the problem statement, you're understanding what you need to do for it, then you're narrowing it down, your approach, you're involving your stakeholders, there's a proper discussion that is happening, and then finally you're actually scheduling you're making an action plan and working on it. So I think this does not have to only to be customer facing, it can be for the internal purpose as well. For any industry, it could be.
Right. Okay. Surya, go ahead. So one point here, Kuntam, what I gathered from Sharad's question is he is implying that in manufacturing, the possibilities to generate more and more options may be limited relative to, let's say, marketing or customer facing functions. I assume he is not implying that this fourth stage methodology is not relevant to manufacturing. It is indeed relevant in various scenarios, various functions, but do we find some variations across these 4 stages in expansion and contracting of bands or application of convergent and divergent thinking as we go across functions, right, Sharad?
Yeah, perfectly.
Maybe I've understood wrong, but thank you.
Yes, so there is that finer nuance that Sharad is asking about. Yes, Surya, go ahead.
So I'm seeing this could be a thing if there's something groundbreaking likely to happen. I come from a semiconductor related path. My domain is into semiconductors, and any intervention to the process costs in millions and billions of dollars, right? So for that particular tweak to be accounted for some innovation, it is unlikely to happen, and even at the process phase, it would be they would not allow to take it any more further. So what I am seeing is there could be a what it could be larger in the context of manufacturing, for example, if the outcome could be groundbreaking. That's what I am seeing.
Okay, all right. So I have a slightly different take on this, Sharad, because I worked in pharma industry. I recollect someone. Are you also working in pharma?
From the pharma industry.
You are right. So let me take an example then from pharma, which is counter to probably the notion that sectors which are dominated by manufacturing, the what if has limited options. Pharma, in original molecule-based businesses or innovator business model, where you come up with a patented molecule, you may have a ratio of as low as 10,000:1, starting from working on which sees the light of day. So if you take R&D pipeline of pharma industry, innovation based particularly, we start with a large number of drug candidates as molecules. That is, so you have a need gap or a pain point identified, right? For that need gap or pain point, pharma companies may start with hundreds and hundreds of molecules at the earliest stage. And then through various phases of R&D and subsequently clinical trials, you arrive at that one molecule which is launched. So in this example, the what if, even though it is manufacturing and R&D in pharma industry, the what if is actually very, very convergent. In fact, if there is so much of innovation going into it, most services sector companies would not have even half of such an innovation at that scale. So in my view, we can't really generalize it to manufacturing versus marketing or other functions, but there would be nuances depending on the business model and the industry. Some business models and sectors may require far more and present possibilities for far more convergent thinking versus divergent thinking and the other way around. Instead of generalizing it to manufacturing lock, stock and barrel. So on a case-by-case basis, we can look at and apply where what if options may not be very abundant.
Understood.
Right.
I think when you start a particular project, in the sense that you have a pain point in terms of manufacturing also, I feel, and then you want to discover the iterations or what if. I mean, you have to really get together all the possibilities and then work on a particular or a few of them, and then get into the what was and the what was. But yes, if it is an established manufacturing industry, then yes, the choices would be limited. But if you're starting afresh, then definitely your choices will be much more.
Piyush, I am reminded of a counterpoint even to established manufacturing sectors like automotive manufacturing. So Mahindra Thar, I have a very close friend from my B school days who is in a senior role at Mahindra Automotive passenger vehicle business, and he was in the leadership team that was driving the launch of second gen Mahindra Thar. All of you would remember this happened at the peak of the first wave of the pandemic. It is the only example globally, just not in India. It is the only example of a blockbuster new generation vehicle being launched and goes on to become a blockbuster success. But the launch was entirely through the digital channel. All distributorships and dealerships were closed then. 15th August 2020 is when it was launched, right? And everything was shut down in the country. Imagine somebody booking a vehicle which cost then at almost 14 or 15 lakh. People paying 50,000 rupees as the booking amount, and it was booked for the next 12 or 15 months online within 2 weeks of the bookings opening. That is the massive reception it got, and nobody who booked the vehicle had any opportunity to test drive the vehicle. It was all going on trust and previous legacy of Thar first gen. So this friend of mine was involved in the R&D and build-up of Thar second gen. He said Mahindra started on this project 4 years back. It took them 4 years and at least many dozens of design options to come to a level where they said even the chassis option, for instance, it had to be retuned such that it could take the rough and tumble of off-roading, but also be comfortable and soft and supple enough for city driving. And that was a huge shift, complete shift from the first gen Thar, which any of you have ever driven or sat in that vehicle, the first gen Thar. Your rib cage rattled after you got down from the vehicle after a 3-4 hour drive. And sit in the first gen Thar and the second gen Thar and you feel the difference, like difference between sky and earth. But they've still somehow retained the popularity of the off-roading Thar, the first gen. That popularity has still been retained, and the DNA has still not been compromised substantially. To some extent, perhaps yes, because the suspension is not as hard anymore. And you compromise on hard suspension, to some extent you compromise on the vehicle's off-roading capabilities. The chassis setup has been changed to make it more friendly for city driving, more family for family outing also. But it went through an iterative process with dozens and dozens of options being tested. Simulations were done, computer simulations. All of it was not happening physically. And through these computer simulations, so this is a very staid traditional sector like automotive manufacturing, but even there, they use design thinking with lots of options at what if stage. And that's why I mentioned that case by case, I mean, a true design thinker would find the potential to apply divergent thinking even in the most traditional sectors. That is my take on it. So one is only limited by their imagination is how I would look at it. That's a thought for all of you to consider. It's not a fact, this itself, but that is my perspective. If I don't know to what extent it addresses Sharad's original question, but it has been a very fruitful discussion nevertheless, with all of you contributing so much.
Indeed.
So would you like to take a break for 10-15 minutes and then we regroup? Because on that question I had asked earlier, if we can connect back to the 5 caselets on how the 4-stage process, that will solidify our learning and understanding around these 4 stages. Then I will take you to the design thinking tools and techniques. And eventually we spend about 20 minutes or so on the action learning project briefing, for which we have created 18 groups of 2 to 3 team members each. There is some logic HeroWire team has applied there in terms of mixing, matching people with diverse backgrounds, more work X, less work X. So that's how we have created the dyad or the triad, 2 people or 3 people in a group. So I will then introduce the ALP project guidelines and the process that will run between now and session 4. Okay, so we will resume in 15 minutes. Yeah, this is sufficient. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
That will help. Thank you.
मिनिमम इतना अमाउंट होना चाहिए, तो वो एक बार दिखाएंगे, बोलेंगे हम ये सोच रहे हैं, तो कारण ताने बोलेंगे आपको कैसा लगता है, कहीं तो डाल दीजिए CSM डाल दिया सर, और CSM के इसमें ना रो नंबर 24 से डाल दिया। हाँ ठीक है, अभी मैंने यहाँ पर एक बार मिनिमम अमाउंट लेकर आता हूँ, ठीक है, मिनिमम अपटिक इन यूएसडी मैं हर कैटेगरी का लेके आता हूँ, ठीक है, 10% के लिए कितना रहेगा, ये मिनिमम अपटिक होगा, हम बोलेंगे कि इसका $2000 हो गया, जी 2 है, देखो 20,000 है, 20,000 के $2000 पे 1200 दिया, मतलब 12%, 10% $200 होता है। कुछ तो गड़बड़ है। इसमें मैंने मुझे नीता 15-20 मिनट दो जरा, मैं इसको सोच कर करता हूँ, तब तक आप किसी
स्टार्ट कर लीजिए।
बट मैं क्या करती हूँ वहाँ पे उनके कुछ वर्डिंग्स बना के
हाँ जी
बना के
हाँ जी कुछ वर्डिंग्स बना के रखिए।
और फिर आपका होने के बाद मैं हम लोग को शेयर।
हाँ जी ठीक है वो ओके मैं उसको भी कुछ अगर कमेंट्स चेंज करने हैं डिटेल में लिखने हैं तो पॉलिसी भी नहीं देखता हूँ मैं। फिर तब तक ये मैं बनाता हूँ पहले इस पर डिस्कस करेंगे। दीजिए मुझे आधा घंटा दीजिए मैं इस पर हम लोग लॉजिक हाइपोथेसिस लगा के बनाता हूँ मैं फिर डिस्कस करते हैं। ठीक है हाँ जी चलो बाय। पता है बढ़ाया 500 लेके जाएगा 900
नेट इंक्रीज देखना चाहिए नेट इंक्रीज कितना बढ़ा है
मैंने भाई ना $500 10% ऐसे नहीं बनाओ ना बराबर मिनिमम आपकी अमाउंट लगाओ इतना मिनिमम अमाउंट बढ़ेगा तो वही होगा ऐसा नहीं करना
मेरे पत्रिका में जो लिखा है वो सही होना ही होना है
अच्छा $1 बिलियन लिखा था क्या
पूर्ण सुखी भोगणारी श्रीमंतीचा योग
श्रीमंत म्हणजे इट्स वेरी सब्जेक्टिव टर्म
रिच फिर वैसे होशियारी भी सब्जेक्टिव है इसमें लिखा पति होशियार है वेरी सब्जेक्टिव
पर मैं नॉर्मल लोगों से होशियार
तो घराना भी लिखा है तभी तो मैं सोचती रहती कि घराना क्या है तो तुम उस दिन बोले कि पटवारी ये वो तुम बड़ी हाँ ठीक है पटवारी है तो और अमेरिका में जाके बस गई तो घराना हो जाए
$1 बिलियन रिच बोले तो $1 बिलियन रिच आता है
अभी वो पंडित की वो कितनी होगी कौन है श्रीमती का योग है जन्मी तकसीम में बात वो है 4 व्हीलर है उस जमाने में 40 साल पहले बात करते
जानू अभी भी वही 4 व्हीलर है ऐसी ब्रांड उसकी
वो नहीं सवाल क्या आता है उस जमाने में भी होना जब किसी की कॉल नहीं होना करेंगे उसको भी हम और ब्रॉडर उसकी व्याख्या कराएंगे
अच्छा 2 तक अरे तुमने सारे पॉलिथीन दे दिए जानू तीनों के तीनों उठा के यहाँ से अरे ये तो अभी वास के लिए जानू वो जो भाजी का था वो तो अभी का था ना उसने मटर छीले कांदे छीले उसमें तो ये डल जाता था मेरा ना
देखो उधर पीछे है
वो जानो फिर वो बड़ा सा लूंगा मैं अभी इतना बड़ा सा वो करता रहेगा अच्छा खासा मेरा तुम ऐसे ना किया करो हमेशा ऐसे करती क्योंकि अभी तुमने उठाया फिर कचरा आ गया ऐसा नहीं है कि वो अभी भैया 7-8 घंटे कचरा आना ही नहीं है। हाँ फिर और वो भाजी वाला तो अभी का था।
मुझे लगा ये लड़का ना वो करेगा चिक चिक फिर भी मैं
All right, welcome back everyone. Shall we resume?
Yep.
Yes, sir. Okay, so do we want to go in the same sequence, groups 1 to 5, spending maybe a couple of minutes on each example caselet and tying it in with the 4 steps? How do you think that could have been implemented there retrospectively?
Do that.
The first one was Alibaba Homa. Anyone from the group can, 1 or 2 people can take lead.
Whom do you want group?
Alibaba Homa, that's the first one.
So you can go ahead.
Okay, I just noted down a few things, and if there is anybody who wants to add anything, please go ahead. So what I would say was that, okay, so first was the what is. Okay, so in that means the needs and the pain points. So lack of consolidated product availability is what I thought of. One, online delivery, because people didn't want to go to the stores if they didn't feel like going to the stores. Second, delivery, of course, they wanted a quick delivery, possibly. Very important was the pain point was they did not know where the food came from and what were the ingredients, how fresh was the food, for example. Sorry. So these were a few things as in what is. Then what if? Now what if envisions a new future? So what if is basically a generation of ideas. So I'm sure, I don't know, they would have done a lot of brainstorming, thinking about what they could do. And one of the ideas would have been to open a store, aligning, because it aligns with the need, and then it has to now take it to profitability. So creation of an app, a physical store, online delivery as fast as possible. All those ideas would have been iterated. Then what wows? Okay, narrows down concept to tangible choices. So tangible choices, what I could think of was targeting the sweet spot of the customer by tracking their habits and choices, and then giving a personalized suggestion or solution. So they digitized everything. Then information about the ingredients and the source, everything was available in one store. And very important thing was shop and cook. You didn't want to take it home and cook it, so they gave you a chef who could, you buy it and it will cook for you. And you could order online. Now, then what works finally? So what works was, of course, I said, no queues, self checkout. You could scan, you could find what was the date, or it very clearly mentions 3 it showed as the day it was procured. The ingredients you could check. There were no queues, you were just scanning them and checking this thing out yourself. Delivery, 30-minute delivery, online stores. That is all that I can think of. Anybody wants to add anything, please go ahead.
So what they did, they also made multiple channels of revenue by adding a kitchen there, and also using the place as a warehousing, for warehousing, as fulfillment center. These are all the different ways they have added to their revenue, and they have made a setup which is scalable. It can be standardized and can be reproduced at multiple places.
Okay, very well. And this is ongoing, as very clearly Piyush mentioned, that it has not all happened in one go. After launching the concept store, Alibaba Homa kept improvising, innovating, and over time they have added more and more features that we saw in this video. All right, let's go to Arvind Eye Care, Group 2.
Hi, Ranjan. So starting with what is the current reality is many people were not able to afford the eye care at that time when Arvind Hospital was starting, and many people were not aware of the needless blindness that can be avoided.
Right.
And coming to what if
So there are two need gaps or pain points. One was awareness itself that it was curable, and the second need gap was providing an affordable cure.
Yes. So coming to what if it is the doctor understood that Arvind Eye Care understood that the new future can be given and this needless blindness can be avoided if they can do an economy of scale. And if they can create that awareness, bring down the costs of the hospital running as well.
Okay.
And those were the hypothetical concepts they developed as well in an unconstrained environment. Okay, and what was is here they have conducted the eye camps, literating the people to the problem they have and guiding them to the hospital and making them aware and making the the treatment affordable to them.
Right.
Those are the 2 points that wowed them. And what works is Arvind Eye Care brought down the cost of lens development at their own centers from $200 to $4. And the second point being low cost procurement of technical staff, reducing their staffing expenses and in-house and giving them in-house training. And third being the economy of scale, through which, though they can provide free treatment to many, the hospital would still sustain by itself in profits.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Anyone wants to add to that from Group 2?
Yeah, in what if they have identified why can't we roll it like a McDonald's model so that they can address the problem in a more effective manner?
So it was, they were looking at process standardization like McDonald's has achieved it. That was the McDonald's model. And if you standardize the process, then it becomes scalable. So that helped with the scalability dilemma, that how can we have dozens of such hospitals and treat millions of such patients.
And also design a model which can be self-sustainable. So that is one thing, and their innovation of the lens has started also generating the revenue.
Yeah.
That was working well.
Right. Yes. So one of the things we will need to do, and this becomes important in your action learning project also, at what wow stage, you will need to identify the design criteria, which means what is it against the benchmark against which you will conduct your option evaluation. You have generated options, but you are going at what if stage, and now you are evaluating options at what wow stage. For instance, common design criteria generally are on the lines of, is it commercially feasible? That can you make money on it? That can be one design criterion. Another common design criterion is scalability. Can we scale it up? Does it have the potential to operate at a large scale? Then accessibility. Will my target audience be able to access the products or services that I am creating? Then operational feasibility. Something looks really good on paper, but when you start manufacturing it or creating it, then you realize that there are operational challenges in creating and delivering value. So these are commonly used design criteria, and more context specific, audience specific design criteria you will need to identify to conduct option evaluation. And then all of the options you have to be rated, ranked in some way on those design criteria. Yes, Kapil, go ahead. Kapil, you have a question or a point to make? Okay, let's go to group 3. Was group 3 on IKEA? Was that?
Yes, we did.
Abhishek, you want to type a chat?
Yeah, sure. Can I share my screen?
Yes, just a moment.
So I just tried to put down some.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me know when you can see my screen. Is it visible to all?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yes. So in the IKEA case, what is the current reality was that good quality furniture are expensive, were expensive at that time, and customization was not available. The pain areas where if you want a good furniture, you need like a carpenter to assemble it or manufacture it, and then different house spaces, different house have different spaces for for a particular bed or wardrobe or something like that. And actual requirements means they actually went down to the different customers across the globe to understand what everybody does, how in the house. So basically, if they have wardrobe, what kind of wardrobe, what they put in the wardrobe, and what kind of section they should actually invent or maybe manufacture, so that customer can relate that it is very useful. Such wardrobes with such partitions are very easy to use, kind of stuff. And then custom build, again the same point. Then what if so there are a couple of pointers, like to provide the high quality furniture products, furniture which are as per the customer requirements, furnitures which are easy to assemble or disassemble, affordable price, and eco-friendly or reusable products. And what was is a product catalog with variety of product as per different users requirement, easy installation without support requirement, and way cheaper or affordable prices. And then what works as actually, it's their how they actually achieve that. So they design product as per the customer requirements. They understood their usage of those products and how they can actually make it more easy to use or more relatable to the customer. Mass production to reduce the cost, space utilization. So they have a model where they don't have a warehouse, everything which is being manufactured directly shipped to the their stores. And while sending the products, every space is, even a tiny space is utilized. So they actually did a space utilization in the cargo, or when they ship the products, and continuously looking for alternative products to manufacture with the same, which can provide the same quality of the product. So again, to reduce the cost, and again the foundation, so they still have a foundation. They are not listed in NYSE. And so that they can actually, they don't have a pressure of investors to make a profit. So so that way they can keep the price pretty down. So these are the things.
Okay, wonderful. And you could put that together quite quickly, Abhishek.
Thanks.
Yeah. So the entrepreneur in you is still able to do things on a quick turn basis.
I've been working with organization for last 20 years in, predominantly into the transformation space. So it comes very handy. We have to make a presentation in a, couple of minutes.
Yes, thinking on your feet is a very valuable asset in the kind of role you have been in.
Thanks.
All right, let's go to Mitti Cool team 4. I will put up the same slide again. In case you need to share something, you can let me know. I will give on screen sharing, pass on to you. Here it is. Yeah. Team 4, Mitti Cool.
Please go ahead. Please.
Right. Yeah, so I built a framework for a Mitti Cool case here. Am I audible to everyone?
Yes, Aditya, go ahead.
Right. Okay. So under what is, which is how Mansukh Bhai identified the pain points, was the problem was that rural households lack access to electricity for refrigeration or other purposes as well. And the challenge was that there was weak demand in traditional pottery business due to industrialization. And Mansukh Bhai identified the gap in the market for affordable and sustainable appliances, which was part of his innovative thinking approach. Then going to What If, where Mansukh Bhai explored possibilities, was bringing in innovation that was refrigeration without electricity, and combining traditional craftsmanship with modern machinery to create a unique and eco-friendly products. And then going towards What Wows was Mansukh Bhai's Mitti Cool's product customer appeal was affordable, eco-friendly, and they were ideal for low-income groups.
Okay.
And his PMF, the product market fit, was there's rising demand for eco-friendly and sustainable products market, and there's also a huge Impex market. I feel it's similar to the bamboo toothbrush market. There's a lot of Impex market there.
Okay.
Then going to What Works is his implementation and scaling strategy was that bringing in innovative production strategy, new kilns, and with the dual concern towards occupational health hazards, and also that innovative approach of combining the traditional artisanal skills with modern machinery. And then I feel his GTM go-to-market was going into online sales, expansion of product lines such as cookware, and by that way, Mansukh Bhai has been able to bring in an impact as he's empowering now local artisan, which is around 10,000 families, especially women. And he's also been able to promote sustainable, innovative, and products, eco-friendly products, and such as he was recycling clay products. So that's pretty much it. And I feel he's turned that's it.
Okay. Thank you, Aditya. That was very relevant again. All right. Let's go to team 5. That is Detroit Airport Parallel Reality application. Let's start with the need gap and pain points that you could identify for the parallel reality application developed by Detroit Airport by Delta Airlines.
Yeah, I would like to go it right.
Yeah.
So coming to what is the need gap is in terms of the passengers having to look at overloaded information and more clear guidance mechanism to get through the sequence till the depart, right? So till the flight departs. So that is the major need gap. And the what if I've seen is enhanced customer experience using a secure and parallel access to a single screen, and which can generate an assistance mechanism. And what works I've seen is using a non-biometric approach, where the user doesn't need to give any personalized information, but rather just the ticket that is being scanned, giving them the access to have the customer get the entire sequence on the same parallel screen, and it can cater up to 100 people at the same time. What works, I'm not able to figure out, because this thing doesn't scale to any. This thing scales in some way in terms of the customer experience, but it would be a part of a generalized thing in the future, right? So this is
okay.
This also brings attraction to people for the beginning stage, and later at a point it would become the norm. Is how I'm seeing it.
Okay.
Isn't it the scalability to the entire world?
It is scalable.
To start with, scalability will be at the airports that Delta Airlines operates from, and then it goes. Then Miss Applied Sciences, the company that came up with this innovation, would approach other airlines for them to do a pilot run. So we will be discussing these two specific design thinking tools and techniques called prototyping and then customer co-creation and learning launch. So co-creation, customer co-creation and learning launch are tools at what works stage, which is exactly what Delta Airlines has been doing. They're co-creating with the customer, as in they're getting regular customer feedback and inputs, and then they will be reviewing, improvising the solution. And obviously it's a learning launch because they have not launched in one go at all of their airports where they're operating from. It's a test run that they're doing, but in a live environment. So at each stage, when we get to design thinking tools and techniques, I will be reflecting on the same 5 caselets, and it would become very evident to us how by application of those caselets proactively. In this case, we are doing a retrospective analysis. But what we have to learn is how to conduct this exercise proactively, that we are faced with a question mark, which is a problem or an opportunity situation. And we are trying to learn a methodology or an approach step by step, which is what we see here, that we can apply to any problem or opportunity situation, particularly something that is strategic in nature. And then by applying these four-step methodology and combination of tools and techniques, we are able to arrive at a solution that creates value for all stakeholders, and most of all can be monetized by the organization. That's the kind of business case you would like to build up, whether as a professional or as an entrepreneur. Yes, Siddharth, go ahead.
So, Doctor, I would say, being part of the group 5, what works, or we could say go to market, we can take an example from the same case studies which we discussed earlier. Say, for example, IKEA. A particular section of furnitures could have this same display, giving personalized input with regards to if they're looking at a bed, having a side table or a lamp available at a particular matching that particular design in a particular different section, and which direction could they go from in the store. So that's something like scaling the solution from just personalizing input for a passenger-based environment to a retail-based environment, or even taking it further into other domains.
Yes, very well. Absolutely. Wonderful. Okay. So let me... as a connecting link between the 4-stage methodology we have learned and tools and techniques to which I'll be introducing you now, I have a very short video, very interesting one, of these two Bain consultants talking about an engagement experience where their client is one of the world's largest oil rig operator. And for this client, they have concluded a consulting engagement where they designed a solution for the specific need gap that was identified. I will let the video itself introduce you to what that need gap was. It's a short video, about 4 minutes, how these consultants or the consulting team at Bain figured out a solution or arrived at a solution iteratively. And this is where they are sharing that anecdote and talking about that experience. So once you have watched this video, my question to you will be the kind of, obviously consultants use a lot of frameworks, tools and techniques. So what kind of frameworks, tools and techniques would have been used by them to conquer what they are calling the unknown unknowns? So let me play the video for you. Audio and video clearly visible to you?
We could hear the audio, but not the video.
Not the video.
We are not using. We are seeing some black screen.
Okay. Is it visible now?
Yes.
Now, yes.
Okay. And audible as well?
Yeah.
Let me tell you a story. Luke and I recently worked on a project with a client who runs oil rigs in the North Sea and elsewhere. And on these oil rigs, there was a lot of machinery which was digital already, but actually the engineers weren't. So what happened is whenever there was maintenance to be done, engineers literally went to the machinery, right, plugged in and read out some metrics. But basically then they had to go back to their cubicle, type it in and send onshore what kind of spare parts they would need. So our client thought, well, actually, there must be something we can do to make this more efficient, more integrated, leaner, and to leverage kind of all the opportunities the machinery would typically provide. The answer was pretty simple. Of course, let's develop an app which the engineers could use, which is integrated and which links directly from the machinery kind of over the engineer back to the onshore facilities.
Yeah, and of course we didn't just come up with this in a room on our own, right? We actually brought in a large number of experts to Madrid and ran an ideation workshop where we came up with the concept of this app, the types of features that it should have, and so on.
The team developed the app, right? So we tested it with engineers in our office, and the functionalities, the features were great. You could do all predictive maintenance. It was significantly faster. You had much more metrics than an engineer would kind of normally get from the machinery. So brilliant app.
It was extensive, but it didn't work. The issue was when we...
Okay, so why do you think it didn't work?
People brought in all the experts, but didn't take the feedback from the engineers, probably.
Okay.
So they not tested in the real world scenario.
Okay. They conducted an ideation workshop. They called in all the experts. They put in consultants' minds, brains to it. But and they apparently thought it was a brilliant app, but it didn't work. So what I heard you saying is they did not take the user inputs into account. So the first iteration happens here now. So let's see what is the issue they identified.
We then put it in front of real maintenance engineers. Is they said, well, we need to wear gloves, and we can't use this app if we have gloves on.
Yeah, I'm aware. I know what you mean. I mean, yes, the glove thing, but the turnaround was pretty simple to do, right? Because we just it turned this app into a fat finger app so that it had big buttons, easy to maneuver. And with this, I mean, problem solved, right?
And it didn't work.
So now what? They came up with a fat finger operated app, but it still didn't work.
They wanted to use both hands, so they couldn't have held it with one hand. So again, it probably wouldn't have worked.
Okay, all right.
We took it back to the maintenance engineers, and they said, well, that's great. Now perhaps I can use it if I have special gloves, but I still need my hands free. I'm on an oil rig. I need to climb ladders. It's dangerous for me to be holding a device out in this fashion.
True. So in the end, what we had to do is we were wondering if you can't use your hands, what you need is probably some kind of voice recognition, kind of Siri style, anything which works, maybe with a small microphone, but which works in a noisy environment. We implemented this into the app and we tested it very nicely at the Oktoberfest, because there we had kind of very high noise level. And it worked phenomenally well. The big question was, of course, do you have internet connection? But we checked with our client, and believe it or not, on all those oil rigs, you have pretty much across the whole oil rig a really, really strong Wi-Fi connection. So, great.
Except it didn't work. We then took the prototype.
Okay, what has gone wrong now? This is the fourth iteration they are on to.
Assumption was that
because of a lot of noise, as well as they might have some gadgets or
okay. They are right now talking about the internet connection. They have fixed the noise issue. They have tested it at the Oktoberfest, where the noise levels are very high, as high as on a
because of the noise cancellation, maybe the engineers cannot talk to each other or signal them what they want.
Okay, all right. Let's see what they identify.
Out to Oman, to a real facility, and we found, they have Wi-Fi. It doesn't reach all of the bits of the facility, but they have it. But what we found was that the underlying internet connection was just not capable of sustaining the type of bandwidth that we needed to run with this modern technology.
Which was in the end a little bit of a bummer. And finally, we managed to integrate a module which is kind of a voice recognition on board. We used a software called Snips, which had all the verbatims needed and the commands, so that finally engineers can work even in an offline environment with a voice-activated voice recognition maintenance app. There's a few learnings from this. And the first one is probably, if you run an innovation project, it's the unknown unknowns which are going to bite you. Things you don't foresee at the very beginning, which are tough to tackle afterwards.
Absolutely, and you may say, it's okay, I understand exactly what the scope needs to be for this project. I've thought it out, I understand what needs to happen. What I would say is be careful. As a rule of thumb, if you haven't done this exact thing at least 3 times before, then you have to make the assumption that you're going to experience these types of unknown unknowns.
Which is why it is even more important in innovation projects to apply agile principles, to truly live, test and learn, and to be able and open to pivot the direction if new things arise.
And the final element, of course, is the parallel to that with the senior management and board. They need to be aware of exactly what running an agile project means, and they need to be giving their teams a North Star that they are working towards, rather than expecting to know on a week-by-week basis specifically what things are going to happen right at the beginning of the project.
If you are a senior executive who just approved quite a budget for an innovation project, ensure that.
Okay, so quick summary of the learnings from this one. There are 4 or 5 iterations they carried out. In retrospect, some of it may seem like idiotic. They must have taken those inputs early on. But then these are Bain consultants. Probably they have trivialized some of their experience because they must have been intelligent enough to do some user testing initially. or maybe they avoided it because going to an oil rig environment would be too punishing for a consultant. But what are your quick takeaways from this anecdote they were sharing in terms of what kind of tools and techniques do you think? Ideation workshop is one thing they mentioned. And one of the things we realized why so many iterations were needed was because user inputs were not factored in proactively. And there was a challenge in doing so because an oil rig environment is a very inhospitable environment for a consulting team to visit it, even for safety reasons. So how is it that we can factor in user inputs into any sort of a solution design right at the beginning? Are there ways we can do it? How have you been doing it professionally? What kind of techniques have you used?
One of the technique normally used is the agile thinking, where we have a quick, we don't look at the product, but complete the product at one go. We do it in stages. So you start with, you have smaller goals and you achieve the first goal, and then you get a feedback immediately on that and see if anything needs to be added. So that's how it's an iterative approach, as you say, and it's a scalable model. So you achieve your first objective and then move on, get all the understand the pain points, and then see if anything else needs to be done. And at the same time, you get a feedback. It's a looped feedback. You continuously keep getting feedback from your end user saying that, okay, how good it is. So you have enough time to say, and then they don't have to, from the user's perspective, they don't have to wait till the end of the project to understand how the product will look like. So they are completely part of the whole process right from the beginning, where their feedback is valued and then it is added on. So that way nobody's in for any kind of surprise. Like what you saw on this, they develop something, it is not working. So you are always in for a surprise. Yeah, so that possibility can be avoided by using the agile methodology.
So we have to learn agile now.
Okay.
Not much of a choice.
So there is agile thinking and there is an agile project management approach. So one does not have to be agile project management certified to apply agile thinking. What we are talking about in agile thinking is we do it iteratively and we adapt as needs are better understood and as newer needs arise. Okay, so, and one way of factoring that in is by early prototyping. That's a tool which is used very frequently. For instance, in app development, many of you will have that background. Early prototyping, where you build a quick and dirty prototype of something you want to experiment with, and you test it in real user environment. And what you learn from there, you go back and improvise your prototype. Anything else? Let's say in marketing and consumer research, any technique anyone has used, qualitative research techniques to understand user needs and need gaps and pain points, which will correlate with the what is stage, understanding current reality and user gaps and need gaps.
Past data collection, running analytics on that.
Customer journey mapping. They need to map what the customer is doing from first point to the end.
Yeah. So where have you used that, Ayush, or seen it being used?
Even in the Homa caselet, I thought that they must have used this to understand that what are the pain points of their customers are, and they tried to rectify it.
And think of what the Bain consultants were describing. If they had used user journey mapping approach there, whether they visited the oil rig or not, they would have gathered inputs to develop a journey map of maintenance rig engineers and operators. And in doing so, they would have realized that there will be a challenge of them wearing gloves, and also both hands must be totally free, not occupied. Because of safety reasons, they have to do a lot of physical moving around, climbing ladders, going into the trenches. And through such journey mapping, they would have been able to sketch out challenges at every step and incorporate that in the very first version of the app. Yes, Sharad, go ahead.
No, so my experience is more on the operation side. So we use something like value stream mapping. So it was a manufacturing problem to identify the constraint in the manufacturing setup. So a product moves from multiple stages, workstations. So we did time motion study. Okay, how long it is taking for a product or a batch to move from one station to another, right? And identify what are the wastages happening. So predominantly creating the entire map or the journey of the product in that manufacturing setup to identify the waste. And to surprise, what it came out was it was the wait time between multiple stations, which is leading to the long delay of a batch getting processed. Right? So that was one of the techniques we had used in one of the projects at our facility.
Okay, value stream mapping. Okay, wonderful. Yes, that's a very relevant tool. Anyone else? Any example? I am introducing you across these 4 stages. A combination of, yes, Avinash, go ahead. Avinash, your voice is cracking up. I was facing this issue yesterday also when we were conducting the breakout activity. I muted you, but I think there is something you need to fix with the audio at your end. Maybe you can type in the chat window. Yeah, try speaking now, Avinash. It is still the static crackling that we are getting. It is more like some sort of alien transmission from another planet.
I was about to say the same thing.
Yeah. So, Avinash, as a backup, perhaps you can type it in the chat window and we will pick it from there.
It could happen that it could be any device associated with the headphone.
Could be
nearby.
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah. Kritika, I just saw there is a message you had sent, share the entire read of the case study. Which case study are you referring to?
So the Bain Consulting one, the oil rig, if at all there is a deeper case study available.
Okay. I haven't come across it. This is only a video I have access to.
Even I saw that. Maybe I'll ask somebody from the tech team in my office, and if I get it, I'll share it with everybody.
Yes, that would be wonderful if you can. Yeah. Okay. So let me introduce all of you to these design thinking tools and techniques. It's not an exhaustive list, but a very useful and relevant list, commonly used design thinking tools that we can apply across these 4 stages. I've also done a mapping for each of the 4 stages. And there is one tool, which is the very first tool I'm introducing, which actually cuts across these 4 stages, which is visualization. We can apply visualization, which means a simple illustration or a diagram outlining whatever problem statement or problem situation or opportunity situation we are addressing through a visualization. Can be a chart, graph, illustration, diagram, schematic, different ways we can do a visualization. And then we go stage by stage. So the first stage, which is what is, we can apply these 3 techniques: journey mapping, which we discussed, step-by-step movement of the user in the user environment. For instance, the maintenance oil rig operators, in the course of doing their work, how are they transitioning from one step in the process to the next step? Similarly, if you think of Arvind Eye Care, journey mapping there would mean that a patient who is suffering with needless blindness, how is that patient becoming aware of the need gap, that their blindness can be cured? So that's the first step in the journey map. Once they are aware, what are the options available to them today to do something about their needless blindness? So that's the second step. Once they realize that yes, it can be cured, what is it that they do next? What are the challenges and need gaps they face? So affordability could be one challenge. Accessibility could be another challenge. Expertise and reliable healthcare will be another challenge. Once they are brought to a hospital and the surgery has taken place, what is the next step for these patients? How does the recovery happen? Do they need ongoing counseling? Is there post-operative care they need? So if you do it like that, you will be able to see from the user perspective, what is the journey they are going through in the course of consumption of whatever product or service that needs to be designed for them. The next tool is value chain analysis. In value chain analysis, we are looking at how is value creation happening. So for instance, if you think of Alibaba Homa, that caselet we had, use case. So in Alibaba Homa, how is the retail chain creating value for customers? At the back end, they are procuring various grocery items from suppliers. And those grocery items are labeled by day and number of the week, of the weekday. So Monday is 1, Tuesday is 2, Wednesday is 3. And there is also a QR code which can be scanned. And when you scan it, you get to see what is the vintage, where has the product come from, how many days old it is it organic produce or not, all of the details, information the customer can see. Which means with suppliers, they have an arrangement through which they are able to do all of this labeling of the produce that is coming to their store. So that's an example of value chain analysis, where starting from raw material to the consumption stage, you outline how value is being created at each stage. Who is creating value, and what is the role of the provider, in this case Alibaba Homa, in delivering value to the customer. An important aspect of value chain analysis as to why we conduct it is value capture, which means, take Apple's example, for instance. We know that Apple does not have its own factories. It outsources all of its manufacturing, but does not outsource product design. It has its own product design team and very secretive. So in value chain analysis of Apple, we would see that the product design is in-house, branding is in-house, but they have outsourced all of manufacturing, most prominently to this Taiwanese company called Foxconn. Now, despite outsourcing all of their manufacturing, Apple is able to capture most of the value it is creating. That is why its margins are so high. So the question is, how is Apple able to capture maximum value and not seed that value to other value chain participants like its suppliers or distributors? So two objectives of value chain analysis. A is to understand who are the various value creators right from raw material to consumption stage. And secondly, how can you, as the company that is controlling the value chain, how can you capture more and more value? Which means how can you monetize the value and profitability for yourself instead of losing it to distributors or to suppliers and other participants in the value chain. The third tool that is useful is mind mapping. Has anyone used this mind mapping tool called, there is one that I used, XMind.
XMind is a very good.
And there are many more, but I have been using XMind for a while. Yeah, Surya, you have been using it?
I've been extensively using it previously, yeah.
XMind.
It helps a lot, yeah.
Okay, and for what purposes did you use it?
Even for, so I was creating a learning charter for my team.
Yeah.
So for breaking down the entire sequence, it was very helpful to go do a mind mapping way. I break the tree phase-wise, and that simplified the process.
Yes. Right.
Would it be out of the scope here to just quickly understand what exactly was this mind mapping? X-Mind.
Yeah, so X-Mind is there is a paid version, but even the free version is very capable. So mind mapping is a tool through which you can organize lots of ideas into a very neat framework and illustration. I'll show you an example how it works. Give me a moment. Some of you texted that you have been using it, but I'll just show you a quick example of how X-Mind or any mind mapping tool works.
Great way to collaborate. Try out the new X-Mind app.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes. Looking for a great way to collaborate? Try out the new X-Mind app. It's got everything you need for teamwork. Boost your teamwork by inviting others directly via email. Or just sharing your work instantly. This is when ideas really start to pop, because your team's feedback can really kick your projects up a notch. And hey, sometimes those old ideas turn into unexpected gems. Grab them any.
Just a moment. Yeah.
I was asked to put together this presentation here, which is mind mapping your business for rapid growth. Now, there's a lot of things that we could do as far as business growth goes. However, what we're going to focus on is some of the more high leverage areas when it comes to generating more business, more sales, more clients, and so forth. The areas are marketing, innovation, and consultative selling. So we're going to look at these three areas, and I was also asked if I could infuse in this video a conversation about. So we want to get to.
you can.
Most people think building a personality means wearing an expensive watch and carrying a branded outfit.
Who are
You can see this is a partly blown up mind map. He started with marketing, innovation, and consultative selling as the three heads to be further explored for building business for rapid growth. And then the marketing head splits into those boxes and the chart that you see there, the various lines coming out of it. So this is an example of a mind map in making. It is a very useful tool to structure lots of ideas and thoughts as they are coming in from your team or you are gathering otherwise. And if you do it collaboratively online or virtually, then it becomes a brainstorming tool for the team.
So basically this is being used for brainstorming within the team.
You can use it for brainstorming. You can also use it for your own note taking. I use it extensively for note taking when lots of ideas have to be put together in a very illustrative format in a small space. So instead of writing 50 things, if I just segregate ideas and bucket them into 4 or 5 categories, and in each category then I start assigning labels, then it becomes very easy for me, my recollection also. Mind mapping is also a great mnemonic tool. It's a memory enhancing tool. It's a visual way of note taking. And when you are able to take notes visually, you are able to retain more and more of it for a longer time.
Ranjan, when this technique is used to even when you read through books, management books or any important books, you can try to remember the entire book by doing this mind mapping. You can chart it out on the various chapters and then what are the key points and other things. So it will be much easier for you to recall whatever you have read.
Shad, you just reminded me of something I was doing during my PhD years, because there is a lot of reading I had to do during the coursework first 2 years. And entire books I had to read in 10 days, 15 days. And I would, for each chapter, I would create a mind map. So an entire chapter of 30, 40 pages, one slider mind map on PPT, and I was done. So various purposes, Piyush, you can use it for brainstorming also. You can use it as a collaborative idea generation tool as well. So if you use it for that purpose, then mind mapping can be used at what if stage 2, which is for brainstorming. But at this stage, what is our current reality, where we are gathering a lot of inputs and building our understanding of a problem or an opportunity scenario, putting together your points and bucketing them into categories would help you a lot. For instance, Arvind Eye Care, you can say what are the challenges related with accessibility, what are the challenges related with affordability. So you can have a box for challenges, and challenges splits up into 3 or 4 areas. Each of those areas you can start putting your observations and questions. Then we go to what if stage. Brainstorming is a tool all of you are familiar with as a technique also, where you get stakeholders. Now these stakeholders can be internal, external, or a combination. You can do various ideation workshops, ideation and brainstorming. And based on those inputs and your understanding of what is, you can then go to concept development. Concept development is where you start identifying features and attributes of your solution. This is the stage where for the first time your idea starts taking a concrete shape. Yes, Vishnu, go ahead.
Professor, basically, first 2 and 3 is also there some tool like this, which is there for mind mapping.
There are softwares. The reading pre-read that has been shared with you has some, I think, links provided there of examples, digital tools for each of these, or most of these at least.
Okay, thank you.
Right. There are customer journey mapping templates and tools available online.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And in VMart case study, which we will discuss next week, I will take you through a journey mapping and customer persona creation use case that I led and implemented in my role as head of strategy at VMart Retail. And Bain or BCG, one of those two, was helping us with that exercise. It was a 9-month-long exercise where we had 80 retail stores picked as our sample out of more than 400 retail stores. And more than 2,000 customer persona interviews, home visits, ethnographic interviews, focus group discussions. It was a massive exercise over 9 months. I will show you the output of that exercise and the process we followed and how it enabled various business decision-making activities.
Okay.
The third step is assumption testing. So you have developed the concept. Think of a simple example. We were talking about Detroit Airport parallel reality. So the concept there initially misapplied sciences would have come up with some sort of a concept where they would have said, these are the key features of what we are building. And then we need to test our assumptions. So which is where you need to take it to a real live environment. That's where rapid prototyping, concept testing would happen. So that's what they were doing at the airport terminal. It was yet not commercially launched, but they are testing the assumption. The biggest assumption is that is there a market for it? That itself is an assumption. You are developing a solution, you don't know if there will be an uptake of that solution. Is there a market for it? Another big assumption people make or businesses make is that yes, there is a market for it, but will people pay for it? That's another assumption you need to take. If your assumption has been vetted that yes, people will pay for it, the next assumption is will people pay for it or users pay for it to the extent that it becomes profitable for us? Right. So there are these assumptions you need to jot down, and when you are testing in the real environment, only then you would get to know that are these assumptions which are vital to the success of that product or solution, are those assumptions valid? And then you move to rapid prototyping, which means why we say rapid prototyping, because we are trying to do it as quickly as we can and not waiting for the perfect prototype. So take it to market, like many entrepreneurs say fail fast. So fail fast is the philosophy driving rapid prototyping. No, instead of waiting for a perfect prototype that, okay, only when I have that degree of comfort, I'll take it to market. In any case, it's a prototype. It does not work. You will come back to the drawing board and come up with a better prototype. And finally, when you've gone through these stages, then you go to what works. So something that has qualified, think of it as a filter. Once it has gone through rapid prototyping and it is a go ahead, then you will take it to the next two stages. Customer co-creation is about involving users and customers in further developing your solution. Mahindra Thar did that extensively. I shared that example with you earlier. They were inviting a lot of Mahindra Generation 1 loyal customers to their test track in Pune and in Chennai. And also a lot of automotive reviewers from across the globe, experts in off-roading, and they were being given a flavor of different chassis options that they were working on and different gear boxes they were working on to test the refinement, but also not compromise on off-roading. So if you're involving user, KFC for instance and McDonald's, when they launched Aloo Tikki Burger, they involved a lot of customer co-creation in arriving at the perfect patty. My first job after hotel management was with India's first multinational fast food chain, that was Wimpy's International Limited. This was way back in 1998. And so I'm pretty well conversant with fast food industry, burgers, pizzas. Those were the very early days. The first multinational fast food chain does not exist in India anymore. Even before McDonald's and KFC and Pizza Hut, Wimpy's existed. So Aloo Tikki Burger is an innovation KFC and McD came up with only for the Indian market. But getting to the perfect patty, flavorful patty, which has the right amount of crunch and taste, and can be stored at minus 20 degrees Celsius. And when it is deep fried, still the flavor would be of a freshly fried homemade patty. Getting to that required a lot of customer feedback and co-creation. And that's an exercise that happens in real environment. Many a times you go to shopping malls and retail stores and you will find there is some live testing being done of different types of food products. where some dip or some sauce is being offered for you to try for free. That kind of exercise is a customer co-creation exercise and a learning launch exercise, where companies are trying to get feedback from real users, go back to the drawing board, improvise, and before a full-scale commercial launch happens. The biggest benefit of customer co-creation and learning launch is that your probability of failure is reduced, because you're investing that much more time and effort in knowing what will click with your user base. So this is a quick roundup of the 10 design thinking tools and techniques that I have included in the module. It's not an exhaustive list, but like I mentioned, it is a list of the most commonly used tools and techniques. Now all of these slides will be shared with you. Have they been shared already? Not yet?
Not
yet.
I don't
think so.
Okay. So what I am going to do now it will take about 10 minutes max. I'm sharing with you, just a moment. In the chat box, I'm sharing with you the ALP project group allocation. I'm just uploading it here. There is a file. Okay, all of you can download this file. This will be subsequently shared by the HeroWire team as well. These are groups of 2 or 3 that we have created. There are 18 groups in all. This is for the action learning project. Now I will show you the project guidelines document, which too will be uploaded, but I believe it would have already been uploaded by now. Yeah, this is the action learning project guidelines. It is pretty self-explanatory. What we need to do in the 4th session, the action learning project presentation will take place. Now, because we have 18 groups, so if I estimate, that would be at most 10 minutes per group. So that's 180 minutes. Yeah, approximately 10 minutes per group is you need to prepare a brief presentation following these steps. And the 15 to 20 slide requirement therefore comes down to 5 to 8 slides, not more, just a 10-minute presentation. Identify a topic or an opportunity or a challenge. From within the group, you can pick any of the companies where one of you is working or has worked in the past. Or if you identify something in the external environment, an opportunity or a challenge which can potentially be a business idea, and investigate that by following the 4-step design thinking process and see if you can use at least one of those tools that we have discussed. Preferably, I would say use something like customer persona creation and journey mapping, value chain analysis. Prototyping would be far ahead, so not possible in a classroom environment. But if you have a real life use case where in your company some sort of product design or design thinking innovation happened and you were a part of it, you can use that use case also to present as your ALP project. These are the evaluation parameters on the next page.
Professor Anil.
Yes, Piyush.
So a lot of things are there in this evaluation parameters and a design brief template as well. But this is pretty cryptic and pretty vast. So is it, if there is any more, sort of amplification on this, or we can reduce it, whichever way?
Yes, you can just focus on evaluation parameters. You don't have to necessarily use design brief template.
Okay.
That is optional. That's just given as a reference document for future application. Let's say later on in a real life environment, you are developing a business case in your organization. So I wanted this document to be comprehensive enough for future use as well. For the purpose of the ALP, you can just narrow it down to one opportunity or problem scenario. And for that opportunity or problem scenario, apply the 4 stages of design thinking that we have learned.
Okay.
On paper, in the classroom environment, if you were to apply the 4 stages, how would you go about it? And while doing so, if you can think of one tool out of the 9 or 10 we discussed that can be applied, or if it's a retrospective use case, you can pick something from past where it has been applied. You can present that as well. You are reflecting on that use case by applying just the way we're doing for the 5 use caselets that we discussed yesterday. We were reflecting on it. So you can do that as well. Preferably pick something from your past or current work experience from within the team.
Okay, there's one create an evaluation matrix for each option in that what wows. What is that evaluation matrix?
Okay. So think of Arvind Eye Care as the use case. Evaluation criteria or design thinking criteria will be, for instance, accessibility, affordability, reliability of the solution being provided. It should be accessible, it should be affordable, and it should be reliable. There could be 1 or 2 more design criteria. So once you've identified the design criteria, you will have 3 to 4 options generated. So one option that what we are seeing with Arvind Eye Care is the option that they launched. But there would have been other options also. So brainstorm on 2 or 3 options at least. And for each option, conduct a rating exercise. Maybe you can have a rating template of 1 to 5. 5 is best or meets, exceeds expectations. 1 is does not meet expectations. So you can say option 1 does not meet the expectation of affordability, but it meets the expectation or exceeds expectation of accessibility or reliability. But option 2 is 5 on affordability, but 3 on reliability. And so this way you will get a matrix, right? Where for each option you are comparing them or rating them on the design criteria or evaluation criteria. The objective of this step is, if there is only one option that you identify and you go ahead with, that's a very unrealistic scenario, because your boss or your company would expect you to come up with various options and then compare them.
You mentioned identify the design criteria earlier. I said profitability, scalability, accessibility, operational feasibility. This is what exactly this means, I suppose.
Yes, yeah. Option evaluation is happening on design criteria or evaluation criteria. Yes.
Does it have to be something new, or we can pick up any case that is already being done by a previous organization? And
you can, yes. So you can pick something which is a business idea brewing in your mind. You can pick something which is a current lived experience for any of the team members, or you can pick something from past that you have been a part of or you have witnessed happening.
One final question: when do we do this presentation?
Yeah, so if you look at your calendar, when is the 4th session happening? What is the date on your calendar?
Dates are not given yet.
Okay, let me share that.
I don't think we have got this.
Just a moment, yeah. Okay, so the 4th session will happen on 22nd Feb. The 3rd session is planned on 15th Feb.
Alright. So 22nd is where we do the presentations, right?
22nd is where the presentation will happen. 10 minutes for each team. And as close as you can come to following evaluation parameters, but don't sweat too much about it. What is important is your application of the 4-stage process, and see if 1 or 2 tools can be applied prospectively or retrospectively. By retrospectively, I mean then you will be reflecting on something that has happened in the past. Prospectively, if there is a business idea, for instance, in the last batch, somebody came up with the idea of electronic waste in cities. E-waste, computers, peripherals, all of the electronic devices, that when they have to be discarded, there is a huge problem of e-waste being created in urban areas. And this team then developed a value chain analysis they conducted. They did some customer journey mapping. They even did 8-10 interviews with some professionals who are users of various electronic devices, people like you and me, for instance, just to understand. They also did some interviews with scrap dealers, those who handle e-waste. So they got some understanding of what is the value chain like, what are the challenges and need gaps, and they designed some sort of a solution which was a completely digital solution, as in they created a platform or an e-commerce platform where they are bringing together all of these various participants, aggregators, those who are generating e-waste, users like you and me, those who are scrap dealers. So they said we will create an e-commerce platform where we become an aggregator, and we are bringing together these various participants onto e-commerce platform where buying and selling of e-waste can happen. So that's a solution they designed, right? So focus more on an idea where you can apply the 4-stage design thinking process, perhaps 1 or 2 tools for your learning. I want it to be an exercise you are excited about, not something that becomes a burden in your busy schedule. If you can do some user interviews, if you can do some exploration activity with users and stakeholders in that specific problem or opportunity scenario, that would be great.
Sure, Robert. Thank you.
Okay. Any other question? And if anything comes to your mind, I can always address this in the 3rd session. We have 2 full weeks to go before this will be due. Even after 15th, you will have 1 more week. All right. Yes, Bhamik, you have a question?
So just a small query actually. I would have my CA online exams for the CA final thing clashing on 22nd, I guess.
Okay. What time is it? Do you know the slot?
The slot is not fixed yet. It would be mostly, around 1:30 to 3:30, something like that.
Okay. So if there is an overlap, what we can do is you can record your part of the presentation and rest of the group. Do you have 2 people or 3 people in your team?
In our group, there are 3 people.
Right. So there are 2 more people who can present on behalf of the entire group. That is fine.
Oh, sure. Thank you, sir.
Okay. All right. Okay. So are we good to wrap up the session then?
Yes,
sir.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay. And have a good Sunday evening. I'll see you all next week then.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
ऐसे हर कैटेगरी का बना है। हाँ जी, जैसे अगर वो 1.2 मिलियन पूरे साल में अचीव करेगा अपसेल और वो पूरा पोर्टफोलियो इंक्रीज करेगा उस कैटेगरी का, तो उसको $1200 मिलेंगे। अगर वो 2.6 मिलियन तक लाएगा तो उसको $3000 मिलेगा, जो क्या होता है, जो इसका 11% है। हाँ, तो अगर लेकिन अगर 1.2 मिलियन कर ले, नहीं 1 मिलियन से ये ऑलरेडी वो पोर्टफोलियो आई ना, उसके ऊपर और 1.2 मिलियन करेगा होगा तो उसको $1200 मिलेगा, क्योंकि जब वो 1.2 मिलियन ऐड करेगा उसका 10% मैं उसको दे दूंगा। सॉरी नहीं थोड़ी देर को कैलकुलेशन एक मिनट क्या करोगे $12,000 ये करें